Hello, I'm a Korean woman married to an American and living in the United States. My husband is serving in the military at a base located in rural Texas, deep into the countryside. The area is so vast with nothing but empty flatland, and the nearest grocery store takes 40 minutes by car. However, I'm not lonely and I'm adjusting well. I get along well with the wives of my husband's colleagues, and my in-laws live close by us. In the U.S., 30 minutes by car is considered close. My husband's parents welcome me and treat me like their daughter, since I'm from Korea and immigrated to a foreign country. Among family members, my husband's younger sister is especially helpful to me more than anyone else. She's 1 year older than me, and she and I have a unique tie because she's also a Korean. To be more precise, she's Korean American. She was adopted from Korea. She's not very fluent in Korean, but we can communicate well enough. I will talk about her more later and tell you about me first. As I said before, I came to the U.S. by marrying an American serviceman. Before that, I lived a life that had nothing to do with the U.S. I am an only child in an ordinary family. Because I had no siblings, I grew up lonely. I was timid and usually played by myself even at the playground, as I was too shy to talk to other kids. One day, when I was 6 years old, I was playing by myself in the sandbox at the playground, as usual. Then, some boys came and snatched my shovel and bowls. I was bewildered and didn't know what to do except barely whispering, asking them back. The kids only teased me, and I started to cry. Then someone shouted, "Hey, why are you stealing that's not yours? Are you thieves? I'm going to call the police." I turned around to see who it was. It turned out to be a neighbor girl who was older than me. She was yelling with a cell phone in her hand at the boys who were hassling me. The boys seemed scared of her threats, threw my stuff, and ran away. She came to me. "Don't mind them. But are you okay? Why are you playing alone?" She asked me kindly. I started crying, being relieved. She hugged me and comforted me. "I'm Ji-hee Kim. What's your name?" "I'm Soo-jin Jung." After that incident, we became close. Our house was nearby, and since my parents both worked and I was all alone at home after coming back from the kindergarten, having her like an older sister was like a gift. She was 7 then, but didn't attend kindergarten like her younger brother. I think they couldn't afford it. She took me to her house and introduced her family and fed me delicious food. Her younger brother was younger than me, and he listened to me well and was kind. Her mom and dad were very sweet to me. Ji-hee, 1 year older, was my only and best friend to rely on. When I told her story to my parents, they were very grateful to her. They would have me deliver a gift or food for her. Then the parents became close too. My parents knew that Ji-hee's family was not financially stable. So, whenever my parents bought my clothes and shoes, they would also buy hers and her brother's as their presents. Then one day, Ji-hee asked me to sleep over at her house. Her parents and younger brother would be visiting their grandmother in the countryside, and she would be alone in the house. I asked her why she didn't go there. Then she said that her grandmother didn't like her and would scold why they brought her and would give her a hard time as usual. Thus, she said she didn't want to go and her parents permitted. I got permission from my mom and was able to spend overnight with her. For a first grader, She was able to cook simple menus and quite capable of doing the dishes and cleaning. She was amazing, even to me, who was a young child. I slept well and was having fun playing with her in the morning when my mom came over to her house. She had frozen looks. "Jihee, hurry and come out. We have to go somewhere." My mom took Jihee and me and put us into a waiting cab. She rushed the driver to go as fast as possible. We arrived at a large university hospital. We went into a ward. There, one person was lying on the bed. It was Jihee's father. He was bandaged and on a respirator. Jihee burst into tears as soon as she saw her father. I also started to cry with her. My mom consoled Jihee and me. An hour later, my father also came to the hospital. "It's too bad. We need to start preparing for a funeral." I didn't then understand what he was talking about. Later, I found out that the bus that Jihee's family was on fell victim to a drunken driver and got into an accident. Many passengers died or were in intensive care, and among the dead were Jihee's mom and her younger brother. Fortunately, Jihee's dad did not die, but his legs were severely injured. The doctor said that even after the surgery, he would not be able to carry on daily activities. My parents, on behalf of immobile Jihee's dad, prepared his wife and son's funeral. There weren't many guests visiting the funeral, but a noisy incident occurred. Jihee's grandma came and started to point her fingers at the photo of Jihee's deceased mom and yelled at her. She screamed, saying that because of that bitch, she made her son crippled and took her precious grandson with her. Then she turned to Jihee, asking why she was left alive. She started to attack Jihee, that my father ended up blocking her. To this day, I can't forgive her actions. Jihee and her dad looked like ghosts after they lost their family members. Although the hospital bills were taken care of by the insurance, he had to quit his delivery job. Even though they could subsist, Jihee's dad lived on alcohol only. Jihee, on the other hand, diligently attended school. My mom looked after Jihee, but whenever her dad drank too much, she would call our house, saying she couldn't sleep due to the potent smell of the alcohol. Then, my mom would bring her to our house for her to sleep in ours. I witnessed her crying secretly at night. 2 years later, I was doing my homework when she came over. When I opened the door, she was crying. When I asked what had happened, she asked me to go to her house with her. When I went over, I saw her dad lying on the floor. "My dad is not breathing. And when I went to school, he was sleeping, but he's not getting up even now." She started to sob. I didn't know what to do, so I called my mom. My mom instructed me to call 911 immediately. She told me to give her phone number to 911. I did as she asked and brought Jihee to my house. That day, Jihee's dad passed away, leaving Jihee all by herself. The cause of death was due to his depression. It was severe enough to leave his only daughter behind him. Jihee cried so much throughout the funeral that she was nearly collapsing from dehydration. My mother felt so sorry for her and asked her to stay with us to think about her future slowly. My father also agreed that having an additional member in the family would not cause hardship. However, a problem occurred. Her grandma insisted on taking Jihee with her. My mother knew at once that it was not a good decision for Jihee. We all witnessed the awful scene she had created screaming at Ji-hee for being alive and blaming her for her son's death. My mom knew her grandma would mistreat Ji-hee. However, my parents had no standing because they were not related but was just a next-door neighbor. Her paternal grandmother claimed her legal right to raise Ji-hee, so the law was on her side. Inevitably, Ji-hee ended up going to her grandma's house a week after the funeral. On the day of her departure, Ji-hee was eating her last breakfast with us. However, no one could swallow any food. Ji-hee and I hugged each other, sobbing. I told her not to leave and to live together with us. My mother also wiped her tears at the harsh future for just a 10-year-old girl. Shortly after, Ji-hee's uncle came to take her. My dad became worried after seeing the look of her uncle. The impression he got was that he would do something terrible to Ji-hee. That's how she was dragged away by her uncle to her grandma's house. Fortunately, my mom took the phone number of Ji-hee's uncle, so we were able to talk to her on the phone. The voice over the phone was always gloomy and depressed. Sometimes she even cried, saying she missed us. My parents felt bad about her, but they were helpless. About 6 months passed like that, talking with her. Then, my mom said to go see Ji-hee during the winter vacation. She called Ji-hee's, and her uncle answered. My mom asked him if we could come and take her along with us to go somewhere. "She's not here," he answered. "Oh, I don't know. My mom sent her somewhere. I knew my mom was mistreating her because she was a girl, but I didn't know she was sending her away without telling me. It's not my fault." Her uncle was afraid of any ridicule and only thought of defending himself. My mom asked for their address. Worried, our family went to Ji-hee's grandma's house. Her grandma was really shameless. When my parents asked where she sent Ji-hee, she yelled at us. "I don't have to report to strangers where I send my own granddaughter. Look at how we live. You might live well and eat anything you want, but for us, we have to reduce at least one mouth to eat. I sent Ji-hee to a better place. That's more than she deserves for a bitch who killed my son and my grandson." My mom became so angry and criticized her for abusing such a young girl who was not to be blamed. She demanded to tell us where she sent her. When my mom continued to demand, Ji-hee's grandma went inside the house and brought a bowl full of salt and threw it at us. My dad quickly hugged me so I didn't get showered with the salt, but it was so scary. Ji-hee's grandma threatened to call the police if we did not leave. My dad tried to calm my mom, saying, "We have Soojin here too, so let's stop and look for other methods." We ended up returning home without finding out where Ji-hee went. We continued to contact Ji-hee's to locate her, but we were just yelled at each time. Whenever that happened, I was on the verge of tears feeling sorry for Ji-hee. My mom consoled me warmly. "Soojin, in life, if you live your life well, you will get to meet her again someday. So, don't feel so bad." It was hard not to think about Ji-hee after that. Whenever I would see her in a dream, it was harder. As time passed, days of thinking of her decreased. I entered college and was in my last semester before graduation. Fortunately, I was able to get a job with a foreign company related to my major after going through fierce competition in the job market. My job required me to meet foreigners and go on many business trips abroad. And on one of the business trips, I met my current husband. When I first joined our company, I noticed a kind-looking foreigner working there. He was my supervisor. He had pretty blue eyes. He always smiled and guided me kindly. However, 18 months after I joined the company, he went back to the corporate headquarters in the U.S. About 9 months after he returned to the U.S., I got to go there on a business trip, and somehow he found out and contacted me. When I went to our meeting place, there was my old supervisor, who had brought a friend. He was a soldier. At first, I was intimidated by his rough, masculine look, but while talking, I realized that he was a lot of fun and was kind. We exchanged our information, and after I returned home, we communicated via emails and video calls. We dated long distance as such, and finally agreed to get married. That man is my current husband. Since we were a long-distance couple, we met each other about 5 times a year. Usually, we met when I went to the US on business trips, or he would come to Korea during his vacation. Physically, we were apart, but our hearts were always together. My husband met with my parents when he came to Korea to obtain their permission for us to marry. My parents received him without any racial prejudice and happily gave their blessings for our marriage. While we continued our long-distance relationship, I was promoted at my job, while my husband also advanced his rank, resulting in enough financial stability to propose to me officially. I accepted his proposal happily. He was a very trustworthy person, and at the same time, I was becoming tired of our long-distance relationship. Both families gave us their blessings, and we began preparing for our wedding. Because my husband was stationed in the US, I had to go there. Luckily, my company headquarters in the US gave me a position, so I did not have to quit my job but be transferred to continue working. Before our wedding, I was to meet with my husband's family. My husband ate at my house and met my parents whenever he came to Korea, but I had not met his parents due to scheduling problems whenever I visited the US. Fortunately, I had a business trip scheduled wherein I could make time to meet with his parents. My husband told me briefly about his younger sister on our way to his house in his car. Honestly, I was busy practicing what to say to his parents that I did not listen carefully to what he was saying. Of course, he probably did not know that. We arrived at his parents' place, which was a pretty 2-storied house. At the front door, his parents greeted me. They had warm and kind looks that one would see in the American family soap opera. His mother hugged me tightly and welcomed me. Then, I noticed an Asian woman. My husband introduced her as his younger sister. I was utterly taken by surprise. I had not imagined my Caucasian husband to have an Asian as his younger sister. Only then I realized that she was his adopted sister. That was what my husband was telling me, to which I didn't pay close attention. I pretended I wasn't surprised and greeted her, saying my name in American way. However, as soon as she heard my name, she burst into tears. My husband and I, together with his parents, were all startled at her. My husband asked her the reason. Then she came over to me and spoke in Korean. Sujin, it's me. It's Jihee. We played together when we were young. She spoke in broken Korean, but I was able to understand her. She was someone deep inside my memory. It was Jihee. Jihee? My older sister Jihee? Really? She didn't have much of her look from the old days. She was pretty when she was young, but she was now beautiful. Tears welled up quickly in my eyes as I spoke. She rushed toward me and hugged me tightly. She and I hugged and sobbed loudly. My husband and his parents looked confused, looking at the scene, and just stood there blankly. After hearing our story from Ji-hee, they couldn't close their mouth from the shock. My mother-in-law wiped away her tears, saying how such a miracle like this could happen. Ji-hee told me the story after we got separated. Her grandma had sent Ji-hee away to be a maid at her friend's house. Ji-hee's wage was sent directly to her grandma, and Ji-hee was mistreated like a slave and had to work there. She was only 10 years old. She couldn't stand it, so she ran away after 3 months in one early morning. She walked until she practically collapsed, but she saw a church, so she entered. She blankly begged a minister to help her and fainted. The minister took her to their subsidiary orphanage. She was afraid to be sent back to her grandma, so she didn't disclose her real name and told them that her parents had passed away. The minister decided to let her live in the orphanage because she was too old to be adopted. However, contrary to his expectation, a couple appeared who wanted to adopt Ji-hee. That was my husband's parents. That's how she got adopted at age 10 in the winter and was able to come to the U.S. She received a lot of love from her adopted parents in the U.S. After graduating from college, currently she's working as a designer. She said that she had never forgotten me. While she was learning English, her Korean began fading away, but she did not want to forget my name, so she continued writing the name on her notebook. She believed that one day she would meet me again. Now, it was unbelievable that we became a family, and of that she was so happy. I immediately gave the news to my parents in Korea. My parents also could not believe it. They came to the U.S. 1 week before our wedding to meet with my in-laws. At that time, they cried a lot after meeting Ji-hee. She cried a lot also. She said that after her parents passed away, she considered my parents as her mom and dad. It would have been true if her grandma hadn't taken her away from us. After such a moving reunion, my husband and I had a wedding, and she became a genuine family member of mine. We were always together, even causing my husband's jealousness. Whenever I visited my in-laws, she and I would stay up all night chatting away. The time was always short to cover the piled-up stories of over 10 years of separation. Who knew that a friend of my childhood would become a family so many years later? My parents were worried about my moving to a foreign land, but rejoiced to have Ji-hee to fill their loneliness. They were not worried about me any longer. I plan to continue our deep friendship since we went around a long way to finally meet again. Thank you for listening to my long story. I hope your days will be with your precious people.